Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Family, a show that is dedicated to just talking and discussing issues related to the family, to strengthen the family. If we have stronger families, then we have stronger communities, stronger towns, stronger states, till we have a stronger nation. And that's the goal. So we talk about a range of subjects here from finance to marriage, which is one of my favorite topics, to health, to a whole bunch of things. And so today we have a special guest with a special story that I can't wait to let you hear. But before we bring her in, I just want everybody to go ahead and take the time out to tag somebody in and let them know that we're on. If throughout the show you have a comment or a question, go ahead and post them and we will get them up so that we can answer them. All right, now it's time. So let me introduce to you the guest for today, Dallas. Hello, Dallas. How are you today?
I'm great, Mr. Bowtie. Thank you for having me on today.
No problem. Welcome. I am so excited for them to hear what you have to say because your story is truly amazing. But before we get into your story, go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Dallas Kohen, also known as the Rebound Coach, and I'm a life coach. So I help people get unstuck. I do that a few different ways. I serve as a vision implementation strategist for heart centered entrepreneurs and nonprofits. And I also serve high achieving women who have lived through betrayal, trauma, or abuse, and who want to reclaim territory in their relationship with themselves. So I walk alongside them on that journey.
That is awesome. That is awesome. You do a lot more than that, but we're gonna go ahead and just let that ride. So we titled today's show I Choose Life. I choose life. Now, I know a lot of people, as they saw the flyer, maybe your followers knew what that meant, but I'm sure a lot of my followers was like, I wonder what is this I choose life. So let's start with, what is this I choose life? Like, where did this come from? What does it mean? Just tell us about the I choose life.
Great. So I Choose Life came. It's the name of my second book, and it came out of my story before I was the rebound coach. I was raised in a very good faith-based home, Christian home. I had two parents that loved God and they loved each other. They were married for a lifetime until my mother passed away. And my mother was terminally ill. So I saw what it was like for a husband to care for his wife as a caretaker. They were a really good example of a good, strong marriage. At the same time, I was molested from the age I was 8 until I was 16. And that radically affects your formative years. So, how I saw God, how I saw myself, and how I related to men were all very influenced by that experience. So, fast forward when I met the man that I married, there were definite red flags going on for sure. At the same time, I was a praying woman, and I believed that two things. I believed number one, God was with us. And number two, because God was with us, I believed that whatever trouble would come, we'd be able to outlast. Well, trouble came right away and never quite went away. We were just kind of in this cycle of what I call coping in crisis, where we were kind of barely hanging on and we kind of found a rhythm of barely hanging on. We did that for a while, and then things would just blow up in
Right,
this really bad crisis, so
right.
to speak. And as the years went forward, the crisis has got worse and worse. And January of 2020 kind of all came to a head. The man I had been married to for almost 10 years had left for another woman.
Mm,
And the very next day, I found out that him and that woman had been plotting my murder
mm.
for months
Whew.
by the time I found out. So, as you can imagine, your entire world stops. I was extremely, threatened as a human
Right,
being, as
right,
a child of God, as a woman, as a wife, as a mom, and as a coach.
right.
I had been a marriage advocate and coaching people around marriage in the faith based space for about 5 or 6 years by then. So, if you can imagine building an entire identity around a particular ideal, and then that's the very thing that has blown up in your face.
Right.
And so I had a choice. I could choose the death that my husband had planned for me, the identity he had for me, to tell me how many days I had on the earth, to tell me who I was and who I was allowed to be, or I could choose life.
Yes.
So the name of my book
Yes.
is I Choose Life, Rewrite Your Love Story and Change Your Legacy. And when we
Yes.
talk about love story, it's not just about a romantic relationship, but how you love and how you are loved is something that we learned and something that we can change if it's not the way it's supposed to be. And changing our legacy is what we pass down to the next generation. So
Yes.
that to me is what I Choose Life means.
Man, that is an awesome, 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 awesome story that you have come through. And it's interesting that you said that you noticed the red flags and you pushed on through the red flags, and I was listening to you and you were saying there was this cycle that was going on. And the first thing popped in my head was that is the domestic violence cycle. That's the domestic violence cycle. And here you are, faith-based marriage,
Hmm.
and you're dealing with domestic violence. So how did that fit? How did that work? How did that affect you and your beliefs and what was going on with you?
So the truth is, there's a lot of forms of abuse,
Right.
and we maybe hear about one or two of those. And even though domestic violence is something in American culture that people do talk about, right? And people from the pulpit might say, if you're being abused, you should leave.
Mhm.
And that's about the extent of what I would hear from the pulpit. And so I grew up in church, and the sanctity of marriage and how important that is to God was really played up. And then there was this caveat: well, if you're being abused, leave. But there wasn't a lot of time spent on what abuse meant and
Right.
how it might be subtle. What I learned is that domestic violence is really broad.
Very broad.
It's not just when someone is hitting you. When that's pretty clear, even sometimes not that, but I won't go down.
Right.
For
Right.
some people who are experiencing physical abuse, it still can be hard to experience, to identify that that's what's going on.
Right.
But even so, there's emotional abuse, there is financial abuse, there's verbal abuse, and there's spiritual abuse. And even so, as a marriage advocate, I felt like I could not give caveats. I couldn't say, well, it's okay to divorce if you're abused,
Right.
because then, I was telling God that He couldn't do miracles, and God
Right.
can do miracles. And people who love God, myself and many, many other women, they really want their marriages whole. They don't want to leave their husband. They don't want to break up a family. They want the miracle.
It's that right there is a something very interesting because here we are sitting in church
Hmm.
and we are experiencing abuse. Let's just stick with that for right now. We're experiencing abuse. And we know that, or we feel that, we may not know, but we feel that there needs to be a change. And all I get from church is just leave. I mean, that right there, just that statement right there tells me that I'm giving you information, but I'm withholding so much information.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing as just leave. If that was the case, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Let's be honest.
And
If
if
it
you
was just that easy.
spend if you spend 99% of your time saying marriage is for life. You stay, you work it
Right,
out, you
right,
work it out. God can do
right,
anything. God can do miracles.
right,
If you spend,
right.
and especially there's a lot of attention spent on wives and how a wife should be a good wife and a
Yeah,
submissive wife and an honorable wife. And if only she does her part, the marriage is going to be great.
right.
Um, that's a very disparaging half truth.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of half truths being propagated,
Yeah,
and it sets us up for something quite frankly that's dangerous.
right.
And I was that ambassador. When people would hear a little bit of what I was going through, they'd say, "Well, why don't you just leave?" And I tell you, I'm not sure what it is, but something would rise up in me that says, "No,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fight for my family, and I'm gonna break the cycle of divorce and the generational curse." Like something holy or not would
Yes.
rise up,
Yeah.
and that advice never worked for me.
Right. I'm a disagree with you just a little bit on that. I don't think that advice doesn't work. I think the advice is incomplete because the answer is just leave. It may not be an actual get up and physically leave, but you got to leave some things and you got to let some things go in the relationship for it to work. So there, in other words, there must be a change that has to happen. You
Hmm.
have to leave something behind. But I
Hmm.
think, like we said earlier, we're not actually providing enough information on the just leave. Like, we're not even talking about the psychological effect that comes with just leaving. We're sitting in church and the pastor's preaching on marriage, or the Sunday school lesson, or the ministry that you're part of, whatever the case may be, and they're talking about marriage and how the two shall become one, and here you are looking at your spouse saying, well, when we gonna become one?
Or the one is dangerous.
Mm,
The My husband didn't lack in desire to control me, but what he wanted to control us with was very, very dangerous.
right,
Spiritually, emotionally, it was very dangerous. So it wasn't that he didn't want us to become one, but that would require my death, quite
mm,
literally and figuratively and spiritually and a whole bunch of other ways.
right,
And that's there's just a lot to unpack in this journey, and how to make this right is not a one size fit all answer.
right,
Um,
right, right.
yeah.
So you're sitting in church and you're contemplating divorce, and you're very faith-based, in love with God, and the Bible speaks against divorce. What are you going through?
So for me personally, I did not contemplate divorce.
Mm,
I did not intend to leave my marriage.
hmm.
And it was really God. And the way I tell people is, a divine set of events. And I have no other way to
Right,
say other than divine. I didn't realize how much danger I was in. It was after he left and I realized that there was a murder plot. I had no idea.
right,
So I didn't know how bad it had been. God himself was rescuing me before I knew I needed to be rescued.
right,
He left, and he went up to be with her, and I found out through more details than I can share. It's in the book. um,
right.
that they were trying to come down and kill me. And so my step was not, I need a divorce. My step was, I need to get out of this house before they come find us,
Right.
my
I
children.
choose life.
I
Yeah.
choose life. Exactly. I choose life. And really the deciding factor, a few days prior to that moment was saying, and it was the Holy Spirit who spoke this through me. And I said to my then husband, I love you, but I love me too.
Yeah.
And I can't live like this anymore. Now I didn't know what was about to unfold. I didn't know the end of my family as I understood it was about to happen. That was never my intention. But the dysfunction and the crazy and the breakdowns and the increasing control that was happening,
Right.
that I was done with. And I'd spoken to a friend of mine and I said, we're in this coping and crisis. And right now we're in a crisis. I don't want to go back to coping. God,
Right.
what do we do so we don't go back to coping? And that was kind of my heavenly signal. And
Yeah.
God moved the chess pieces for me.
Right. So when you started seeing the cycle that you're going through, the coping and crisis that you're calling it, how, like, at what point did you begin to realize this needs to be a change?
Um, we had done this for years. You know, I had been married 10 years before we were officially divorced.
Yeah.
And I was kind of predisposed to survival because of the
Right.
abuse
Right.
as a child. So I knew how to survive, and I knew how to kind of make a way and put a band-aid on things and try to, like, that was my life. And it had just come to a head. Now, my former husband has mental illness. And so that was part of, well, this is who he is, and I'm married
Right.
to him, and I'm stuck here. So I didn't consider my own life
Hmm.
and freedom. And we had just gotten to this level. I was just up to here, and I said, we can't do this anymore. God, I don't know what to do. And
Right.
he ended up being he ended up being Baker acted, which is a law
Right.
where authorities decide you need psychiatric treatment, even against your will. And
Right.
so he was in the hospital, and he was calling on the phone asking me to pray that he come home. And I started to pray, and something just kind of stopped. And I said, God, I don't want him home. I want him healed. I
Yeah.
wanted an end to the
Wow.
destruction. And I didn't know what it was going to cost me, but I was done with the destruction.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, like, there's so much to your story that is just amazing. It's just amazing that you are able to sit here and even have a conversation about your story, just with the little bit you've told us. And there's so much more that you told me, and so much more that you revealed in the book that, we would definitely won't have the time to get to in the show. But that's why I'm like, I'm trying to have a conversation, but I'm just like, oh my gosh. You've come a long way to be the rebound coach, and you are a walking testimony of how you can endure so much and still rebound. That shows you have a strong will and you have strong faith. you know and your children were involved in all of this. How do you have a conversation with your children?
um, it's hard. Um,
Right.
and
Yeah.
my kids were 7 and 8 when all of this was happening, and unfortunately, his mental illness is all they knew
Right.
of him. That was their normal. That was their father, and what they knew of him. And unfortunately, he was a serial adulterer. So this was not, suddenly he had a mistress. He had many mistresses over the years. The majority of them were emotional adultery, so texting and on Facebook, things. And he'd have 5 or 6 at a time. And then, I'd find out, he'd get rid of them, and a short while later there were 5 or 6 others.
Right.
So there was just this whole really toxic dynamic that was always going on. And unfortunately, he had told the children, your mom's going to die, and meet this other lady. And, I had visions. There's a lot. And
Yeah.
so my kids are amazing. And God, I have no other thing I can say other than God, the Most High God, has just saturated my family,
Right.
and not just kept us safe physically, but my children are in sound mind. They're
Mm.
well behaved kids, and we've been surrounded by a community that has shown us so much love.
Right. That's
And
good.
not everyone gets this
Yeah.
benefit. I've come to know and walk with a tribe of women who've experienced things like I have. And they don't, not everybody gets love. Some people
Right.
get rejection from church or from family members or friends,
Right.
and their kids go haywire. It's not it's I am just I've just been so blessed. I've
You
just
said something in there that I talk about all the time. That community aspect is so vital. The African proverb says it takes a village to raise a child, and I use that in so many different aspects by simply saying we're more than a child and what we think we are, you know. And in your situation, you became the child, and it took the village to help you survive, to protect you, you know, to help you choose life. You know that community aspect, and the fact that you said when you were growing up, you experienced abuse, and now your children are experiencing abuse. You know that shows how the cycle can be perpetuated. You
And it
know,
was different. It was different abuse. I
yeah.
had, sexual abuse as a child. My kids experienced, I would say, spiritual and emotional abuse
Emotional abuse, yeah,
directly, but they definitely witnessed,
yeah,
everything that was going on in the home. And I'll say this too is for community. So many times, women, I serve high achieving women because I was one of those. I am one of those,
right.
and we don't ask for much because of whatever reason we think we can handle everything, we think we're going to be a burden to someone, we don't ask for anything, and often we're not in a position to receive the love that's already around. So,
Mm,
high achieving women are lonely, and they feel like no one sees them, and they're just kind of a function of what they do for people. But really, that's a story we tell ourselves. It's not the truth. We are very loved, but if you're not in a place to receive it, and I
right.
wasn't, I felt very lonely and at times suicidal. I didn't feel like there was a hope or a future outside of the suffering that was happening in my life. And the situation made it so that I had no choice but to say, help me, I am
Right.
literally dying. And there was so much love all around and help, practical help, that's just been amazing.
Yeah. It seems like a couple of things that you experienced in your childhood helped lay the foundation for what you endured in your marriage. You know, you said you were used to, you know, repairing and doing the things as a child. You know, it seems like when you got to the marriage and everything that was going on, you know, it just seems like it was a continual cycle that you learned and live to learn. And
Hmm.
you got a comment saying, "Wow, you just encouraged me, Dallas. Bless you very much." This is my cousin Akila, uh, that is commenting on that. So yeah, I mean, so what do you say to other spouses that are in this domestic violence cycle or experiencing this domestic violence or don't even know that what they're experiencing is domestic violence? Because
Yeah. So two things. When you're talking about being predisposed, I write in the book about my love story, which is how I learned to love and be loved. And one of the big things, and even outside of a relationship dynamic, we had struggled, money struggles growing up. And so my dad was a businessman, and he would take these risks, and we were homeless twice. And lights getting cut off and water getting cut off and all sorts of things. And so he kind of spun it to us, and he's doing the best he can, as dad of kids. He kind of spun it as, we're doing God's work, and this is what happens when you do God's
right,
work.
right,
And so it's a dynamic I call glory in the struggle. And so
mm,
we kind of glorify pain, and we
yeah,
glorify lack or struggle or hardship and say, this is the way of the Lord. So when I was in the marriage I was in, first of all, me being able to say yes to what I knew would be difficult. I didn't know all of this was going to happen, but I knew there was red flags. Okay. I knew this was not going to be easy street, but I understood God's assignment to include struggle, and that was some kind of badge of honor. And when we
mm,
when we do that, it makes safety antithetical to obedience.
right, right,
Right. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's a really important point.
yeah,
But what someone can do if they're in this kind of dynamic, if any of that, if there's power and control struggle, if your husband is using scripture to demean you, or tell you you're not good enough, or control you in some sort, there's a lot of things you can do. And it's not all like, oh, you just need to leave. Okay, sometimes you're not ready for that, and that's okay.
Right. Right.
Um, I would say there's a national hotline for domestic violence. It is 1-800 safe or 1-800-799-7233. It's a national hotline. There are professionals you can call and be anonymous. No one has to know. You don't have to use your name. Or if you're not sure you're being abused, you can just call this number and say, hey, I'm not sure. I don't know if this is abuse, but this is what's going on in my life. Also, I would encourage you to connect, be seen.
Yeah.
Okay. This is be seen. A teaching in the church is you don't talk bad about your husband. You don't talk bad about your wife. You're not talking bad about them. You're telling people your experience, what's going on in your home.
Right.
So much around, well, I can't say anything bad. Be seen. Let someone know what's happening. A trusted friend. If you want to be anonymous, I have a private Facebook group called Team #Covenant Warriors. You can find me on Facebook. My inbox is open. The Rebound Coach. You can find me on Facebook. You can go to my website. You can find me on Instagram, The Rebound Coach. Um,
Everywhere.
yes, I am happy to hear your story. I'm happy to believe you. Not
Yeah.
everyone is believed. So be seen and get some help. And very often you don't have to, like, if you're playing football, you don't have to like be all the way in the end zone to figure out
Right.
how to get to the end zone. Just do the next step. For me,
Yeah.
being getting safe. And before then, reaching out to a friend and saying, he's not I can't pray in my house. He kind of hovers over me and tries to control it. Can I go to your house and pray? Like that was like a step one.
Hmm.
I couldn't. I needed God. I knew that.
Right. Right.
but the environment in my home, I could not pray. He wouldn't.
Wow.
He wouldn't let me. So that was step one. And I sat there in my friend's house, and God, what do I do? And
Yeah.
all I could hear was call your father-in-law. That was step two.
Yeah.
Like it's God is really faithful in that he's not gonna overburden you with stuff. Like, don't try to figure it out. Just do
Yeah.
whatever step is right in front of you. Take
Right.
that one, and then the next and the next.
That is a very, very, very important thing that you just said. A lot of times, and I'm gonna use myself as an example. I'll see that to make an impact, you have to take huge steps. You see what I'm saying? Like the way my mind is set up and the way I live my life, you know, it's like, all right, I'll make $1 million tomorrow. You know,
Don't we all, man?
right. And so when I wake up the next day, my mind is totally on making the $1 million. But there's a million steps between waking up and getting to that $1 million. And
Yeah,
sometimes it is those minute steps that you take that make all the difference in the world. Sometimes it's just a matter of finding the control that you have, and that could make all the difference in the world. And that's what you did. You found the little sliver of control that you have, and you was able to utilize that control and take that step. And
yeah,
each step, sometimes it's baby steps, sometimes it's leaps, but either way, you took steps. And that's what you're telling everybody: gotta take steps.
yeah.
Inactivity is not activity that we're talking about right now. Yeah. Whew. So, how did this change your view on marriage?
So this is kind of a big metamorphosis. Because I had, from 2015, I do events as part of my coaching practice. And
Hmm.
so I had done events called bridal retreats, and it was all around marriage, of course,
Right,
and equipping women to be wives in difficult situations, because I had a very difficult marriage and
right,
I wanted to help other women who wanted to stay married but were having a hard time. And so that was the platform. Okay. So if you can imagine, like, that whole thing going bust, and I was very I quit for a hot minute and
yeah,
said,
yeah.
oh, I can't do this. God, you were wrong, and I'm not going to do this anymore.
Wow.
Oh, okay, you got to have your moment.
Right,
um
right.
uh but my ex-husband used to call me Captain Save a Marriage. because he was smart. He's a smart person. Abusers aren't, necessarily unintelligent. So
Right.
anyway, uh, I kind of went from Captain Save a Marriage to Captain Save a Person, because
Mhm.
the underlying belief was, well, if I can just create strong marriages, like you said in the beginning of your show, it's the foundation for a strong community. I
Yeah.
wanted I wanted kids to have safe places to grow up. And so I felt like, well, if we could help parents get married, number one, and then
Right.
parents stay married, number two,
Right.
that would create a framework for kids to have a safe place to grow up, and we'd have healthier kids and healthier generations. Well, what I was missing, and it's a noble endeavor. What I was missing is that it's people who make the construct, not the construct that makes the people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's not about just being married to be married or staying married to stay married. If those people are not on a path of healing and growth, God can do miracles. He
Yes.
has done miracles, not without the person's participation, however.
Talk about it. Exactly. Like I said, inactivity is not what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So really that was the big missing piece. He wasn't sorry. He didn't want to change.
Right.
That's really what it was about. And so I missed my part in it. I need to love myself. Wait, what does this look like? I am a child of God. Is it okay to be to call what I was living in a covenant when really the door was wide open, the windows were wide open, and the back wall is gaping?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this
Yeah.
is not it's not a covenant, and I'm lying to myself otherwise. And so now the focus is on growth and healing, for
Yes.
those who have experienced those things. So we're not in our own cycle of coping and crisis.
Hmm. Yeah. Woo. I don't even know where to go from here. This is so much. It's so much. It's so there's so like 1 minute the show is heading toward marriage and relationships, then the next minute we're talking about domestic violence, and then the next minute we're talking about childhood trauma, the next minute we're talking about surviving. Like there's so much.
Yeah, yeah. It all comes into play.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. So, it's interesting because there's a lot of things like what you said, there's a lot of things that comes into play to what we're talking about, and somebody can get overwhelmed, like just using you as an example, since you're the one on the show. Childhood trauma caused you to react a certain way in your marriage. A lot of things that you learn as a child, you said this is normal. And so since I grew up like this is what happens, and now I know how to survive.
Mhm.
And so now we're in a marriage, but then all of a sudden things are not looking right. They're not feeling right. And I know things are not right. So it contradicts a lot of that ingrainment that we get at home.
Mhm.
So I'm sure there was a huge shift or a huge turn that you had to endure during all of this. When you stopped doing what you said, the bridal retreats, like what was going on during that time? The reprogramming, I guess.
So I had done bridal retreats from 2015 through 2019,
Hmm.
and I always do them in the fall. So fall of 2019, I did an event, and we were ramping up for what I was calling an honor pageant. Like we were ramping up, not down.
Yeah,
And that was September of 2019. So December, is when all the breakdown was happening. And I write in the book about the story of that and how everything unfolded. And 2020 was pandemic.
yeah,
So imagine all of that happened to me in January and February of 2020, and then March we have a worldwide shutdown. So life was very different, and the beauty was, God is just so faithful. And I know I keep saying that like a broken record, but um, because everyone was home and everything had slowed down, I didn't have that pressure to kind of make life happen, and survive in that way. I could breathe, I could breathe, take my time and heal. And it wasn't time to it wasn't time to run. It was time to rest. And so I spent that year really kind of recovering. And it wasn't until a friend of mine had her own traumatic experience and didn't have any help. And she's that kind of person that helps everyone. And she had this concept of sanctuary, creating a sacred space for
Right.
women to encounter God, not to hear about God, but to encounter God in a very intimate way and be heard and be seen and be nurtured. And
Right.
so that, and she kind of roped me into doing something with her. And that's kind of how we
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
again. Okay, I'm back in business. We're getting the gang back together. And we just did our last sanctuary experience in September. So just last month.
So you brought up something, and that I kind of want to touch on briefly. I just saw a statistic finally, and I've been waiting for the statistics that I've been waiting on it, and they were saying domestic violence rose 8% in 2020 and the beginning of this year, and being so I'm gonna say it like this. This is one of the things that I said about 2020. All of our vices were removed. If we knew that there was trouble at home, we knew we were going to work. We knew we was going to the grocery store. We knew we was going to the bar. We knew we was going to the sporting event. We knew we was chasing the kids all around creation.
Mhm.
But all of those vices were removed. Church was removed. Sporting events was removed. Clubs were removed. Events were removed.
Yep.
And so the the places we looked to for sanctuary were removed.
Mhm.
And so now the relationship that I'm trying to spend as little as time, as little, how do I say
Mhm.
that? A little,
As
little,
little time as possible.
yeah, I couldn't get it for some
Yes.
reason.
Yep.
Now I'm face to face 24/7 every day, and there is no escape. Going to the mailbox is not an escape, but there may be, but it goes back to that sliver I was talking about. Sometimes you just got to find that one step that you got to take. And if that means just getting out the house and going to the mailbox,
Yep.
but so what do we say to, someone that is still dealing with the effects of 2020 in the marriage?
Uh, it's not easy. You'll have to fight harder for freedom and fight harder to be seen than before, but you still can.
Right.
Um, my crisis happened over a Christmas break.
Mm,
So my kids were home and I was home and we were home. And I
right.
used to that really was I used to spend a lot of time at the office. I'd work and work late and get there early and I would do that. I would totally do that. So I know what that is to be able to escape and to do something you're good at and be encouraged,
Right.
and then go home to disaster area. So and something I had a friend who knew what was going on. Again, you have to be seen
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. You have to tell someone what's happening. And I told a coworker who had become a friend, and she said, "What can I do?" I said, "Well, can I come to your house and pray at some time?" And so by the time we were able to do that, there was so much going on.
Yeah.
And I called her. I said, I had already scheduled time to go to her house. And I said, "Hey, I need to bring my kids too." And so I told my husband, I said, I need to run some errands. I'm going to take the girls on some errands. And he wouldn't let us. So I'm a Hebrew by faith. Our family was Hebrew by faith. And we used to celebrate Hanukkah. And that year he decided we couldn't.
Mm,
just
wow.
decided, just decided. I don't know
Wow.
where. Well, I say no. And so I had to do this horrible tap dance, trying to be celebratory with my kids, but not offend my husband. And
Right.
so the kids had nothing to do. So I said, just let me go to. So just that, I got away for a couple hours, and once I found out about, there was death threats. He was sending death threats to my phone and this whole other thing, and I shared that with my friend. She says, Dallas, please just stay here a couple days, just a couple days,
Mm,
please don't go back. And that was, I got a couple days, right,
mm,
at her house. And then when it was time to go back, I was like, I wanted to be seen. So I went to a church service. I don't normally go to a church service on a Sunday. We do Sabbath to Saturday, but I wanted to be seen before I went back to that place. So I went to a Sunday church service. Hello, I just want you to know this is what's going on. I just wanted somebody to see me before I go back there.
yeah,
So all of these, take the small steps you can take the small, and there online, there's a lot of resources online. There's a lot of pockets where women like me and like you, if you're watching, live, and we support each other, and we share resources and things that you can do, and resources, and strategy, all of
yeah.
that.
So you have repeatedly used the phrase, I wanted to be seen, make yourself seen. So what does that mean? Like what does that mean? Just
So I write in the book about feeling invisible.
mhm,
And it's a common sentiment. For me, it started because my mom was terminally ill. So when you have someone who's sick in the house, all the attention goes there.
right,
As it naturally, that's natural, that's normal.
right,
But for me, I wasn't the kid that was going to act out. I just kind of shrank into the background. And we had a bunch of foster kids in the house, and the foster kids had their issues that
right,
demanded attention. And so I just kind of backed into a corner and felt very unseen. And even throughout my childhood abuse, just felt very unseen. And for all intents and purposes, my parents did know at one point, and didn't really take appropriate action. And so I felt very invisible, and became a function of what I could do. I was always very ambitious or enterprising, or I was very achievement oriented even as a kid. So the achievements got press,
right,
but not much else. So that became kind of transactional relationships, and that's how it looked for me. But sometimes, well, if you act out, then you get attention, or if
right,
you are sexually available, you get attention, or whatever that is. People feel very invisible, and the truth was, I never was invisible. I felt
right,
that way. So
right.
again, it's a story I was telling myself. And when you start telling your stories as a kid, those are harder to break.
Yeah,
But if you see it, you can change it.
yeah. So the be seen is sound like it's more of a mental state of mind that everything that's going on, either no one sees me or I'm not seen because of everything that's going on.
Or no one cares. And
Mm,
so many times people would come to me after all of this, after I have a book and things are out, and they say, I didn't like your marriage. I didn't like what was going on, but
wow,
I didn't want to say anything. I wanted to
wow,
be honorable. I wanted to
wow.
respect your husband. I didn't want to say anything, but it didn't look like you were having a good time. You know, People did see. Lots of people saw, but they felt like they couldn't say anything. And for me, the step is, if you feel unseen, the step is telling someone, hey, if they say, how you doing, not so great,
Right, right.
tell the truth.
Yeah.
Tell the
I had a
truth.
I had a I had a friend that um he he said it once or twice, and I ended up saying it so much he thought that I coined the phrase. But I have a friend that he would say you must have enough courage to care. And when you said people saw the red flags and they knew something was going on, but yet they stayed back. I mean, it's nothing to go to somebody and say, I see what you're going through. I'm praying for you. And that would have helped you from feeling invisible.
I'm gonna tell you a story. This I don't remember if I wrote this in the book or not, but it's absolutely true. So we were in a church, and eventually he isolated me where we didn't go to church at all.
Mm,
But before that point, we were in a church, and the night before we went to church, he had thrown me across a room.
wow.
And he's a big dude. Not a small woman. I'm a short woman, but not a small woman. And he had picked me up and threw me across the room. And that was like Saturday night. Sunday morning, we went to church. I had a little baby, and someone prophesied to him, like, oh, you know how they do, and they call you up and they say, thus says the Lord. And it was all positive. It was all positive. And I sat there, and he had kind of cultured a thought in me that God loved him more than me.
Mm,
He was better. He was more spiritual than I was. He was further in the spirit than I was, and God cared about him more. And so I watched that.
mm,
When God spoke prophecy, God spoke, but God didn't see what I was dealing with. And I sat in
mm.
my seat, and I just cried, and I just cried, and I just cried. And someone saw me cry. And they came up at the end of the service and says, I don't know what's going on with you, but God sees you, God loves you. Like, that's it.
Yeah,
That's all she said.
yeah, yes.
God saw me, even though the public display was something else. And I told myself, well, God don't see this.
Yeah.
God done pulled him up and didn't say, don't throw your wife across the room.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah.
But we are indeed seen.
Yeah.
We are. But I will say this: if you care about someone who's dealing with this, I give this advice because this is what was true for me. It is not true for everyone. Everyone has different opinions. But when people told me to leave, I wouldn't leave, and it made me not only not leave, it made me say that person is not safe for my story,
Mm, mm,
because I was really determined to stay. What I would say is just be present, love them, listen to them, and say, I love you. And no matter what you choose, I'm here with you. And that's it.
yeah.
Because those were the people I could reach out to when there was a crisis and when I needed that. Now, on the other hand, he had friends that he had told I was going to die. Like, he told them that, and they didn't say anything to me. Male friends that were his friends, that would consider themselves family friends, who knew me, who'd come in my house, smile in my face, act like we're okay. And he told you that and you didn't say
Yeah.
anything. If somebody's trying to kill somebody else, please speak up.
Yes. My friend, Dr. Nathaniel Dunlap, I call him JR, he would always say, you have to have the courage to care. Like, you have to have the courage to say something. You know, I'm not advocating for the friends that knew. They might have been in fear, or, didn't know how to make a difference or say anything. But sometimes you got to find a way, and that you kept saying over and over again, and it just hit me. You felt invisible, like, be seen. And I started thinking, a lot of times when you're in this situation, and a lot of situations, you feel like you are alone. You feel like you're by yourself. And in a lot of situations, if you're being oppressed, that's their intent. Their intent is to make you feel like, let's just be honest, they are your God. They want you to come to them for everything.
Yep.
And so they want to control everything. So you have to be seen. You have to be seen. And those that see it have to have the courage to care. Man, this has been an awesome, awesome, awesome show. We covered so many areas, so many topics. I don't think we drilled down on any one thing. I think we just ran the gambit on on a little bit of everything. So, man, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being open, and more importantly, thank you for being personal. This is not something that a lot of folks would want to tell, but you're willingly sharing your story to encourage others so that they will not feel invisible, so that they will be seen. So let the viewers know how to reach you and how to get in contact with you, and how to get more information from you.
Yes. Well, it all starts at thereboundcoach.com. That is thereboundcoach.com. If you go to thereboundcoach.com/book, you can get a copy of the book, I Choose Life. It's also available on Amazon, but right there at that link, you can get a personally signed copy from me, or you can link to Amazon and get a copy. I do recommend this, especially if you know someone who's gone through something similar or is going through something similar. You don't have to say, you don't have to be preachy. You can say, hey, I heard about this lady. You ought to read her book. It's a crazy story. And that can be enough. So please, please, please be seen. Be seen. We want to hear you. I believe you. I see you. Nothing's impossible with God, and that includes your own safety and freedom and life. So I want to help walk with you in your choice for life, whether you're going through that right now or it's something in the past, but you still need to come through and rewrite your love story.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I tell you what, woo, you got an amazing story. Amazing story. And you shared with me a little more. And you just reminded me. I said I was going to get a copy of your book, so yeah, I'm gonna have to get a copy of that book. But I, like I said, I want my autograph. So yeah,
Happy to help. TheReboundCoach.com/book. I will sign your book and mail it to you.
awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for being a guest. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story, and thank you for being an encouragement to the viewers.
Thank you for having me and having this really important conversation. When you're an advocate for marriage and family, all of the aspects of that are so, so valuable. So thank you so much for having this
Yes,
conversation.
yes. Thank you very much. Have a great day, man. Woo. There's so much more that we talked about prior to the show that we were not able to talk about during the show, and we knew we weren't going to get to. So we were trying to hit the highlights, hit the high points. But there's so much more. I do encourage you that if you are in any type of situation close to that, like she said, be seen. Make yourself be seen. And it's not the big steps that you need to take. Sometimes it's just those small baby steps, those minute steps, those little inches that you need to take that makes the difference. Sometimes you got to find that sliver of control. And in the end, you have to be like Dallas and you have to choose life. You have to choose your life. And that's what's important. And that's what we were talking about today. I choose life. So I thank you for coming on. I thank you for viewing. The next show, we will do a Veterans Day show. I'm excited about that show. Number one, because I'm a veteran. I don't know if y'all can see um, my retirement flag and all of my coins. I got some more. Let me see. I got some more back there. You can't see them all. I got some more, but I am a veteran, and I do take being a veteran very serious. I dedicated 25 years of my life of active duty service for this country. So the next show will be a Veterans Day show, and it'll be a few people on, and we'll talk about some things going on in the military, some changes and our perspective, and just salute to those that have served. So feel free to view it on the next show. We're here every 2 weeks talking about family. Warren, Mr. Bowtie Feaster, thank you for listening in. And I always like to say, one, be the best you that you can be. Two, the center of life, the center of everything is family. And three, it's called life. Live it. Have a great day.